Hello, everybody. Welcome to Reaction Pod for House of the Dragon, Episode 3. We just watched it. I am your host, Lee. I'm joined by my co-host, Spencer. This is Mangum Talks TV. Spencer, how are you?
As you can tell from my hair, I've had a very delightful Saturday of mostly not leaving my couch. Or Sunday now. The days, they flow together. But yeah, I'm doing great, man.
It's a good Sunday when you don't know what day it is. That shows that you've done the right thing on a Sunday. Another thing you've done right for a Sunday is watch House of the Dragon, which we just
Of
got done
course.
doing. We watched Episode 3. What was your initial reaction to this episode?
Fitting in the mold of the last episode, this is an episode that tickles my fancy. It was a lot of great dialogue, a lot of good character interactions, several scenes that I quite liked. Not the most forward momentum necessarily with the plot, because part of the point of this episode was the desire to remain idle or find means of avoiding active conflict and what efforts you would make in terms of furthering those objectives rather than for furthering the cause of war. So it wasn't the most action-packed episode, but in terms of what we got of it, I thought there were some great scenes, some great moments, and some quality script writing. So I was quite entertained.
Glad you liked it. I liked 45 minutes of it. And then when Rhaenyra decided she was going to go on deep undercover into the Red Keep and talk to Alicent, I threw my hands up and said, "This is malarkey," as it were. Yeah, I was done with it.
What rubbed you wrong about that scene?
Well, it's first off, it doesn't happen in the book. Second,
Very much so.
so they completely made it up, and it feels to me like I'm reading intent into it, and you can always it's always a slippery slope when you start reading intent into what they're trying to do.
Sure,
But
sure.
it felt like a ham-handed way to try to resolve another thing that they added from the book, which was the misconception that Alicent had right as Viserys was dying, the confusion about what he said right at the end. I feel like they wanted to put a bow tie on that, so they did it this way. It's problematic in a bunch of different ways. First, no way that this happens. This is just not going to happen. Like, first, Rhaenyra is not somebody from Pentos. They know Rhaenyra. People know her faces. Like she's got to be
Potentially
careful
on site.
walking her. She's got to be very careful walking around the Red Keep. There's a number of people there who know her. I don't buy that Alicent wouldn't yell out and immediately have her captured. That doesn't make any sense to me. And she did this all because of a letter that Alicent sent that said, "Hey, I feel bad that your son died." Like that's where Rhaenyra gets the idea. Okay, so she sent me a note saying she felt bad that my son died. She's the key to fixing this war, to ending it in peace. So I'm going to go deep undercover the Red Keep. And by the way, it's going to work. Alicent's not ever going to like expose me and throw me in a jail cell. The whole thing was a crock to me. It didn't make any sense.
I enjoy that how much Rhaenyra is emotionally invested in this. We've talked about the show's playing up Rhaenyra's naivete, the idea that people will flock to her banner, that she need to make very much in the way of active steps for a war, that peace is an option if she can just meet face to face with Alicent. I think the show is acknowledging it's naive, and one of the ways that scene played into it is the first thing that Alicent says whenever he says, we can talk, we could reach terms for peace, and the first thing Alicent says is, "Oh, so you're going to surrender?" And Rhaenyra just gets this like deer in the headlights look at her face of, "Oh right, just because the two of us want peace doesn't mean there's any terms we actually could agree to right now."
And then for them to just happen to work out as they're talking to each other, what happened
The
on
Prince of
Viserys'
Sopranos.
deathbed is very convenient and fanciful. Like it doesn't strike me as realistic in a way that often Martin's writing is. I mean, in a completely unrealistic world, he throws in very realistic situations with gray, difficult, not good, not bad people. And this felt like more fairy tale writing, where things just sort of work out and happen in furtherance of the plot. Very often in Martin's writing, in my opinion, he'll give you a situation where things could work out for the plot and they just don't. And they just don't work out. Like instead it works out how like messy, ordinary people sort of operate, right? And in that situation, I think the move is Alicent would have hollered and Rhaenyra had been thrown in a cell. Like it doesn't, none of it made sense to me. And then the bow tie on top is that they just happen to work out, and to the point that Alicent even clearly believes it, so that when she gets resolution too about what happened on Viserys' deathbed. Don't like the last 15 minutes, and that's the last I'll say on the last 15 minutes.
For me, it didn't rub me that wrong. It was not my favorite scene of the episode, but it felt like it was a scene that was necessary for television to wrap up other possibilities. That this is meant to be the final door closed moment. It's meant to be add to the tragedy of where this was a last chance at peace and everybody's on the same page, but things have now gotten beyond even their ability to control it, even if they wanted to stop it. So I think it's a television scene. I'm with you. It doesn't necessarily fit with any aspect of the book just because the characters are so different, or even with George R. R. Martin's writing. But it felt necessary for a resolution standpoint to move on to the next chapter of the television show. And I think like this is peace cannot work. There is no further hope, and all characters understand that this can't be explored more. We are marching to war, so that the characters can emotionally, particularly given how farther along or how a different place on the spectrum they put both Alice and Rhaenyra, and particularly Rhaenyra, that for her to start moving in the different direction on that spectrum, they need to close off that as even being a possibility anymore, so that she can emotionally go in a different direction.
Makes sense. I'm fairly confident that that almost beat for beat was said in the writers' room. Like the writers, Condell, whoever's writing this, said something like this. But then they said, okay, so now we've got to get there. And so they back into a very convenient way of doing it. You're right. It did further the plot. And this iteration of Rhaenyra that we're getting, which is empathetic. She has whatever the opposite of bloodlust is. That's what she's got. And this is in furtherance of that character, and it works for that character. What doesn't work is the execution. That it's it's strange. Like I want to say like it's a fictional fake bullshit scene, but I'm like, well, wait a second, this is all fake, and it's like a bunch of fucking dragons. Things. Yeah, but it feels. I guess I've already said it. I think it just feels fairy tale in a way that I'm not used to this world, and so I wish they'd backed into that in a way that wasn't, what we could do? Rhaenyra could put on like, you remember the thing from the Shame episode? She could put that on and then just sneak into Red Keep and they could sit there and chat. Oh, great idea.
She did look like the younger sister of the Shame Nun.
For sure. It's the same thing.
Tis the nature of the habit, but even just that in the framing very much look very similar. If you want to talk about fantasy, though, we got to see some interesting prophecy this episode, or interesting vision, as it were, provided seemingly from a Weirwood-based source when it came to Daemon's time in Harrenhal.
Yeah, I'm sorry I get so meta with this. I'm going to really try to say some positive things about this episode. So please hang in there. I'm not all negative, but I fundamentally believe that they liked the Rhaenyra actress from season 1 and they wanted to get her a paycheck. And this was a way to get her a paycheck. Is that we do a Daemon dream sequence where Daemon is feeling guilt. There we go. That's the way we get it done. Now they did introduce a character, the woman that he sees in Harrenhal. Right, not named as of yet. That's we like to talk about things to watch for. We don't like to spoil, but we like to say keep an eye.
Check her.
Just keep an eye on it.
We keep meeting little characters that they seem to focus the camera on as they walk into rooms. Just remember them. Maybe some of them we even get names for. This episode, the guy that we saw staring at rat catchers last episode has now been named Ulf. I wonder whether Ulf will come up again in some shape or form now that he's declared to an open bar room that he's a dragon seed.
I would like to talk to someone who hasn't read the story, doesn't know where the story is going, and ask, okay, when you see Ulf and Hugh, are you just what are you thinking? I'm not going to spoil anything. You don't have to turn this off if you haven't seen that. You haven't read the story. But I'd like to know, what do you think you're watching? Is it just man on the street? It's all right, now let's just go down and see how the regular people are doing. Is that what we think we're getting? Because it feels a little like elbowed into the table, and it just doesn't feel like it fits right now to me. But again, I know where that's going, so perhaps I'm looking for it.
Well, we talked about that last episode, that the times when we got to spend with certain members of House Hull and with Hugh the Hammer, that they did not fit into the
Hugh. That's all we're getting right now.
Hugh, we got Ulf, we got several other people we're checking in on for no reason whatsoever. But they did not fit into the overall narrative of the episode particularly well. Last episode, they were still good scenes, but they didn't fit with the themes that every other scene seemed to be hitting on. This one, they did give us the idea that this guy is a dragon seed, which he's claiming to be such, that he has family connections into the Targaryens, and that he has a loyalty for Rhaenyra. So this felt more easily plot relevant than maybe some other scenes with other secondary characters that haven't been fully elaborated on yet.
Now, Ulf claims to be the son of Balon the Brave, who's a son of Jaehaerys the Conciliator. We will discuss that more on our podcast on Wednesday when we actually break down the episode. We'll talk about who Balon the Brave was and why Balon the Brave didn't become king. Why there was
There's a story.
Why they had the great meeting there at Harrenhal, which is what we start the entire House of the Dragon series with.
One thing I did love, you want to talk about the Targaryen story? One thing that put a smile on my face at the beginning of the episode, the intro. The intro is changing. The intro is adjusting, and it's great. We're seeing the narrative being written as time goes on and events occur, and that's going to be great to watch in. I love when I'm excited to watch the intro credits, because I get to see the little notes, to see the little changes. But my favorite parts of the early Game of Thrones seasons was because they actually would adjust it. One of the things that annoyed me most about the last Game of Thrones seasons is where they were just always the same. So that's a little tidbit that I very much liked, of where I'm watching through, barely pay attention, and suddenly I say, there's a red line going across a kid in a crib. Oh my God, they're changing this as time goes on.
I would love to talk to somebody at Warner Brothers, who owns HBO Max now, and find out how much it costs them to change the intro, let's say once every 2 episodes, and as a percentage of maybe total production budget. Because I think it gives like rank and file fans in like the percentage happiness that it gives you is so much higher than the cost. It's like
the investment
always
there.
Yeah, it's always worth it. It's great ROI on changing the intro every week or every other week or something. Like it's a kind of a must in this story. Like that's low hanging fruit. Warner Brothers, I know you're listening. Make sure to do that. That's a really good idea. You see how happy it just made Spencer, and nothing makes Spencer happy.
It's a very small list, and little changes to intros that involve decapitating children, that is one of the things on that list.
I kind of like the idea, like somebody might have picked up our video pod here for the first time, and they don't know our personalities on podcasts, so they're like, wait a second, he's the one that's unhappy all the time. You just did 20 minutes about how much you hate this episode.
We switch every now and then. It happens.
I didn't like Rhaenyra sneaking in the castle. I'll tell you what I did like.
What was your favorite scene? I'm curious.
Well, I don't know about favorite scene. I don't know if I can quantify that yet, but I did really like Brackens and Blackwoods. I like that a lot.
And also, Blackwood representation. The Blackwoods won the Battle of the Burning Mill. I don't want to care about this green propaganda that's claiming the Brackens prevailed there. Blackwoods won that shit. Check the wiki. It happened.
Check the wiki, he says. Come on, Allison. Check the wiki.
Yeah, pull up the internet that doesn't exist. Look about what some other fan put down in terms of details that they copied and pasted from a different book, and, recognize what the victory was. Admittedly, the Blackwoods lost their heir in the process of burning a mill, but, kudos. First battle of the war.
I like everything about the Bela character. Knocking that out of the park. Bela feels like Daemon's daughter to me. That's a great characterization so far. The scenes they've given her work for me. I'm enjoying that.
Yeah, Bela is one of my Bela the character, and Bela the actress who plays Bela. I'll look her up when we do the longer podcast. Knocking out of the park, doing great. She has really represented the role quite well, and it added to, that was just a well-filmed scene, the tension of her and her dragon swooping down and possibly going after a high tower and a coal. I knew they weren't going to die because I've read the book, but it was an appropriately tense scene to see them rushing into the forest and Bela stalking over them like a friggin' roving serial killer in the skies above.
Bethany Antonia, I'll tell you how they could have improved that sequence. Please. Is if there were more knights riding next to the High Tower brother, Talison's brother, and Kristen Cole. Because if it's just like, if you read the book and it's just both of them, not much is going to come from this. If there was 3 or 4 other knights around,
some red shirts, sure,
then I would have been like, oh, she's going to start, spit some fire and burn some of them, or snap some of them up or something.
She had orders. She wouldn't disobey them. Not really.
She was 100% going to disobey them. And Moondancer, by the way, Moondancer doesn't play. Like, yeah, Moondancer might have done it on her own. Like that dragon is not a joke.
A little scene I quite liked. I really liked the scene of Daemon arriving in Harrenhal and talking with the Castellan, talking with the Lord Strong that's there.
Yeah.
There was really good dialogue and really good characterizations there, and I thought the actor, I don't know if we'll meet him again, but the actor who played the Castilian did a really good job with a tertiary role.
Now you know who he is in World.
Yeah, he's the younger brother of
The old master of laws.
yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, right. So Larry's his father. So it's Larry. Yeah, Larry's his uncle. Right. He was the younger brother. He's the Kevin Lannister of that crew. And
Rightfully deduces.
And I'll tell you, I got to say, my bullshit detector was not going off when he was speaking.
No.
Like, I believed every word he said.
Would you eat those peas? Would you have eaten those peas? Tried those venison?
Second helping. I'll take some to my room, please.
Yeah, I love that Damon's there for war. He's going in solo. There's a certain element of almost like looking to get hurt and looking for violence that affects him. Yeah. And then he arrives, and the guy just gets down on the ground, and just like, the castle is yours. Would you like a plate? We got some tasty food here. It's like so matter of fact of, well, obviously we're not right now.
So I got the feeling when Lord Strong was talking that he was not a dumb man.
No, in no sense of the word. He seemed quite capable.
And his reaction to Damon walking in indicated to me that he had predicted this would occur. Mm-hmm. And he was not scared. He was not surprised. And he was somewhat ready. And so that begets the question, did he have the castle sort of, hey, we're not going to have any guards out. We're not going to fight. Like, we're not going to pull everything back, because I think somebody from Rhaenyra's camp is coming. And when they come, let them in. It took one headbutt for Damon to get from the fucking roof of that place all the way to the current keep, like, the current magistrate of the place. So I think he pulled everybody back in anticipation of that. And if that's what happened, they may not play that's out in the show. They may not have enough time, but I'd be very interested to know if any of that sort of tension or that sort of not serving Lord Larry's gets back to Lord Larry's, that there was something afoot at Harrenhal to undercut him at all.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned it that way, because when we were watching the episode, my girlfriend Bridget when Damon just walked in the room, she's like, where's all the damn guards? And then the guy kneels on the ground. She's like, oh, right, we saw a guy yell out dragons, and then all the guards disappeared, and then Damon walks right to the guy that's surrendering. So her response would immediately put two and two together of, oh, this guy planned this. So I'm with you. I think the show set it up in that direction of, we saw a lot of guards run away when they said dragon, and then Damon walks cleanly right to the guy to surrender. To the guy who's going to surrender. Right.
And so if they're concerned about the dragon, he gets off the dragon. He's off the dragon for quite a while on his own. They wanted to kill Damon. They killed Damon. You rush him with 20 people. It's over. You almost felt like Damon had a death wish even walking around this castle this way, because he had no idea that the castle had basically flipped sides already. Just kind of got lucky there, it seems. Just kind of got lucky.
Damon every now and then feels like he's a character with a death wish, and that seemed like it was on display this episode. Other scenes that I quite liked. How did you feel about? Well, it's an actress we've always said is doing well with the role, but Rhaenys advising Rhaenyra and talking to the small council. The actress is just doing great and embodying the gravitas of that character, I feel.
Yeah, I would say that. I'll look up the actress so that we're not doing this. So my concern, can you look her up for a second? All I'm getting is Emma Darcy. I know that's Rhaenyra. So my concern is that Rhaenys is never wrong, and Rhaenys
Eve Best.
Eve Best.
Mm-hmm.
Is it EVE?
EVE, yes.
Yeah, that's nice. All right, yeah. So she's fantastic, but I think that the concern I have is Rhaenys is never wrong, and Rhaenyra is almost in a subservient role to her. Like, she at this point in Rhaenyra's reign, she doesn't buck Rhaenys. She seems to take pretty much everything Rhaenys says, lock, stock, and barrel. And she's looking to her as these council meetings are ongoing, where she's just getting bullied by her council. And she does very little to push back. So yes, Rhaenys is an interesting character. I like when she's on screen, I'm entertained. but I also think it highlights the problems with Rhaenyra. I mean, it's a fucking shit
I,
show over in Team Black right now.
I think the show's leaning into it to a certain degree because we get several, as you said, we get several scenes of where advisors are saying, Rhaenyra, you've got to act. You've got to do something. We're at war now. Steps need to be taken. And Rhaenyra basically walks out of the room without really declaring anything, and it instead falls to Rhaenys to actually direct the counselors and issue a decree, or at least try to mollify them or scare them off effectively. Rhaenyra is not ruling, and we got to see several times in this episode
She's not.
how much that's grating on those under her command, to the point that one of her counselors is literally saying, if you're not going to do something, at least let me go home so I can fortify my forces, because the army's going to be marching past me soon. So I think the show's last episode, I think the show was sympathetic towards Rhaenyra in terms of dealing with the counselors. This one felt a little bit more even, where the counselors were very much like, there's an army marching. What are we doing? And Rhaenyra still just walks away.
Same.
I don't think the show is entirely sympathetic to Rhaenyra about her efforts towards peace. And I think some of the scenes with Alicent highlighted that, of how much it comes across as almost willfully optimistic, naive, however you wish to define it, in terms of her very much desperate efforts to avoid peace. Now, that could be that she's trying to fulfill her father's will, and the show is leaning into that her father was very much a peacetime king, the good king, the joyous king, and she's trying to fulfill that legacy, but it comes across as being that she's, more than anything, just putting her forces behind the eight ball by doing nothing.
I do 4 hours of podcasting on this show a week. I do 4 to 5 hours of notes on this show a week. I've read the book multiple times. I watch each episode multiple times. And if what they are planning, what they like, the idea behind Rhaenyra's indecision and Rhaenyra's strategies, I'll put that in quotes right now, is that she's trying to fulfill Viserys' legacy. It's not clear to me. So I don't know how many people it's clear to. So they could benefit by her every once in a while going, my father wouldn't have stood for this. I'm like, she can say that. Like it's a natural thing. Natural thing she would say to her council is to invoke her father's name. For God's sakes, Rhaenys invoked Jaehaerys' name this episode to try to mollify him. So why wouldn't she invoke Viserys' name to connect the dots for everybody that that's what she's doing? I'm not so sure that that's what they're after with the plot. I think that they've created a character that they have a hammer and they are beating the top of the nail over and over again to show you, no, she cares about people. No, trust me, she's empathetic. She really does love people. She really does. She's a caring queen, not like these screens. And it's just worn a little thin for me after 3 episodes so far.
And you actually had Masari even say that out loud in terms of what the basis of her loyalty is that Rhaenyra cares and she's not one to be a tyrant over King's Landing. At the same time, when Rhaenyra mentioned the idea of, I need to go talk to Alicent, Masari, who's in a wartime footing, immediately said, oh, you want to kill her? Sure, I can get you in to do that.
Right, and Rhaenyra doesn't want to do that. I mean, of course not, because that would actually be progress on her side. And, actually, the Masaria's response to Rhaenyra, and like, I came back, helped you. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't, but I tried, and I want to serve on in your court. Is because you let me go. That's realistic to me. Like that's realistic in the way that like it feels like something a rational, reasonable person might do. Might let her go. They might say, you know what, I kind of need to lead this way, where people don't just run around saying that Team Black breaks our word. So I'm going to try to fulfill this word of Daemon, even though like Daemon annoys the shit out of me, and that would engender loyalty. That doesn't seem so far out of the bounds. Like, but some of the stuff she's doing, like, just absolutely not willing to move a soldier at all, not willing to move any armies anywhere, not to prepare, not to nothing. The only thing she's willing to do is take Bela, one dragon, really high up in the sky, and like give me a scouting report. That seems over the top in trying to show us how much she doesn't want war.
Well, she is making steps, but she's making steps that don't have immediate effect. Like most of what she does politically this episode is bolster the basis of her alliance with the Arryns, because she's sending her kids, she's sending baby dragons, she's sending a base of her support there to secure her loyalty so that she'll send an army. Problem is, the Vale's a long way away from where things are actually about to go down. So she's putting all of her hope in the Vale, the Vale of Arryn in the north, marching troops to her aid, when what she's not doing is building any forces that are here that she can actually use to deal with the one basically undeclared region. There, she basically got the Blackwoods and Damon. And that's kind of it. And some crown lands houses that are, uncertain in their loyalty, or at least have some loyalty, but they're separated by basically a sea from where she is. So she's making moves, but she's not really doing much active moves in terms of, as Allison called out, it's like, why would we negotiate with you? You have no army. You have no basis of threat. You aren't negotiating from a position of anything resembling strength. Why should we just give you the throne? And Rhaenyra had no response to that because it's all true. One thing to talk about that I found interesting was, well, we've been discussing a lot of what are the problems with Rhaenyra as a leader and where she's not proving much of a wartime monarch at this point. How did you feel about your boy Aegon? You're the man you've sworn your loyalty to over the course of this episode. It seems like they wanted to focus on some less seedy or less complimentary aspects of his character this episode.
I think anytime you got a two-person race, and I'm just talking about the show here. That's all I'm talking about. Anytime you got a two-person race, you can't throw one aside without the knowledge that you're now stuck with the other, right? So, yeah, you want to throw Aegon aside? Fine, throw him aside. He sure sucks, doesn't he? He sure sucks. Hey, he sucks. Look at him. He's drunk. He's running around a whorehouse. He's being just absolutely asinine. Awful. But if you toss him aside, you know what you got? You got Dragonstone and what's going on over there, which seems a complete clusterfuck right now, too. So I don't think there's any good answers going on in this story. Before we get into Aegon too much, on the Lady Jane Eyre thing, on shoring up the relationship with the Aarons, do you feel like the show connected the fact that she's sending dragons to placate Lady Aaron because Lady Aaron specifically asked for dragons when Jace came and visited, because she says that the veil is protected perfectly. The Bloody Gate, you can't, Spencer, you can't get in there. I mean, you're just not getting into it. I mean, we saw it over and over again in Game of Thrones. You're not getting into the Bloody Gate, but you can get in there from the sky. Do you think they connected those dots enough that the average viewer, or let's say the majority of the viewer, understood why the dragons were going there?
No. Maybe they remember that Jace mentioned that very offhand before he started crying and then hugged his mother in episode 1. Because that's the only time that ever came up, was the idea they asked for dragons. As we talked about, I think it was a missed opportunity in episode 1. We didn't get to spend more time with Jace's adventures. Because if the Aarons are one of the key bases of her support, why did we get to see the North but not them? They could have spent an extra 5-10 minutes giving us an aspect of Jace going to various places, and it would have given us a lot more foundation of understanding of who are in Rhaenyra's camp and why are they there. Because right now, the Aarons exist basically only on paper. And we may never really get to meet them other than occasionally we see people wearing the Falcon logo. Because that seems to be at the level of investment in the Aarons at this point.
I hope Rhaena gets there and she walks in and Lady Jane Eyre's like, where's that sweet cheek boy who was over here? Where's my Tootsie? Bring him in. Where's my baby Jace? Come on in, Jace. That's what I hope. I loved that implication in the book that she was flirtatious with Jace. I just don't think that was connected. So I think that's kind of gobbledygook to most people, that Rhaena is going there with the dragons and the eggs. And then it was a little complicated what her whole mission was, because it was like, take the dragons,
drop them, then you go to Pentos.
Then you're going to Pentos to drop the kids off and keep the kids there for however long it takes to keep them safe. I think if you put a map in front of 70% of the watchers of the show and say, where is Rhaena going? It's gonna look like, like me with left hand and crayon, just I don't know, somewhere. On the piece of Aegon, I actually like what they're doing with the Aegon character, because when Jaehaerys was murdered, I came on this podcast and told you I need to see a different Aegon now. He needs to snap. This is a guy who cannot handle something like this. He's not equipped for it. He has no support system. He's done no personal growth in his life. He doesn't know how to handle bad news, bad situations, bad feelings, depressive feelings, all of this stuff that you work through with age and life and with the help of your friends and family. And you pull yourself out of tough situations, and that muscle gets stronger. And the next time you have a tough situation, you're more equipped to get out of it. He's not done any of that growth and building over his life. So when something like that hits him, he's going to snap like a twig. And that's exactly what we've got. He's just out of his mind. And I think that's a great portrayal of that character. I hope it continues. If he turns around next episode and he's like, he's shaved and like sober all of a sudden, like, I'm ready to get back to work, I'm going to be like, that's
No.
just not what I believe of the character. I think he's going to be a hot fucking mess unless he relies on his relationships with other people to help pull himself out of his grief. But it doesn't look like he's going to do that, and I don't expect him to.
But wrapping up our 30 minutes, I have to ask, based on what you've commented, where would you rank this episode compared to the last two? Of course, you're going to watch it 3 more times before we actually do the final review. But for your initial impressions,
I'm going to watch it multiple times again because I got to do the notes. We got to get ready for our extensive recap, which we do on Wednesdays. We break it down line by line, Spencer. Line by line, break it down. Every single aspect of the episode, which we will do. But I can tell you, I can watch it 2 more times or 10 more times. It's going to be third out of 3. It's definitely my least favorite of the season so far. How about you?
I would rank it in the middle. I think I liked episode 2 the best and episode 1 the least. And this one, it had several of the hallmarks of episode 2 that I quite liked. And while there were some scenes that I wasn't quite as fond of, I don't think they rubbed me as raw as they did for you.
Okay. Let me ask you maybe 1 or 2 more questions and we'll get out of here if that's all right with you.
Please.
How do you feel about the Allison Kristen party? Like they spent a lot of storytelling equity in the first 2 episodes to make sure we knew that these two had a relationship. They were hooking up and they had guilty feelings. Favor. It kind of felt like all right, see you. Like it felt like kind of 2 people like hooked up and they didn't know if they should. And then it's like Sunday and they have a quick breakfast and they never speak again.
I don't think so. I think if she'd refused him her favor, maybe. But the fact he asked for it and the fact that she gave it to him, that's a physical embodiment of there being a relationship that I think is going to carry through.
Oh, so you think they'll see each other again?
I think it's very possible they'll see each other again, yes.
What a romantic you are.
There'll be much emotion exchanged with respect to their feelings for each other.
Now, Rhaenyra had 3 children with Valerian. Help me with his name.
Laenor
Valerian. I always want to say Joffrey. Joffrey was his person, and Joffrey was his son, but not him.
Yes.
Yeah, with Laenor. Had 3 with Laenor, or Breakbones,
or Harwin Strong,
or Harwin Strong, and then 2 with Daemon. The 2 with Daemon that lived are Viserys and Aegon. And then Visenya, who died, which we saw that in season 1. So the 2 little whitehead boys were Viserys and Aegon, and then Joffrey was the 3rd strong boy that she shipped out. Now that means that she is now shipped out. So one son died, Luke. She shipped out 3, and 1 is there with her fighting the war. The heir. That's all the children accounted for. Do you think just the table set, just understanding the number of children is something that people are getting in their head? And maybe the answer to that is an easy no, but more so, do you think that they conveyed to us the logic for sending the kids overseas? Do you think people are understanding? Do you understand her logic for why she sent the kids overseas?
I think the show conveyed enough. I think the show told us that it's for the purpose of safety. And that's something that is imminently apparent, given what we've seen in the last few episodes in terms of children being killed, threats to her immediate life. It is an active concern that I think people will understand in terms of why they're being sent away. In terms of numbers, I think people have a better understanding of how many children there are in the black team than there are in the green team, because I'm not entirely sure how many children there are in the green team right now as a book-to-show adaptation. I'm not sure episode to episode how many children Helena has, because if I thought there were 3, but I saw people online saying that there were only 2, in which case the oldest male heir is now Aemon. And if that's a change they're making, that's a change I think they need to highlight more.
I watched some of that too, right? And I watched a number of YouTube channels, and I'm trying to remember the one. I think it's like a Deep Inside Geek or Deep Geek or something. And the guy who I really like, he usually does a lot of Lord of the Rings stuff. He claimed there was only 2, and then I looked at another, breakdown, a YouTube breakdown, and they also claimed that 2 children. That's it. We very clearly, while we paused it, we were looking for it.
We did.
I think
Questioning reality.
I think people miss this. I honestly believe that some of the professional YouTube viewers, the people who are going to post a reaction video and get an awful lot more views than us, missed it. That there were three children sitting there in one of the play scenes before the scene where Blood and Cheese come in, and so Maylor was established in that scene. But you're right, the green children are really hard to keep up with, and we just get reference that there's Daron. Which, by the way, if you haven't read the book, you're probably wondering, are you just going to start dropping new kids on me? Like you haven't. There's no basis for just throwing Daron in there. I actually, I was, you know what I was doing? I was switching it up. I was giving you a little hezzy because every time normally when I ask you, do you think they've done enough? I'm expecting to know. I actually agree with you. I think that the answer to that, they did rush that scene, but the answer to that is simple enough to be able to do it, which is I've already had one kid die. I've had an assassin get in my bedroom. I'm just scared for my kids now. They got to go. And I think that you don't need to spend too much time on that.
Incidentally, in terms of your favored king and ruler of all of Westeros, how do you feel about him picking his drinking buddies to be his new Kingsguard?
I think that is the exact type of move I expect from Aegon post Jaehaerys dying.
Yeah, it's like, I want people that I can trust to defend my family. Who can I trust? The guys that I was there getting drunk on the Iron Throne with when my son was murdered. Them's the ones I want as sworn brothers of the Kingsguard, which I like. Even Cole. Even Cole was basically casting shade on that one over the course of the episode. If not helped by the fact that they were just openly disrespecting him as part of being new members.
So their YouTube video I was referencing was Robert with In Deep Geek. In Deep Geek, fantastic channel. I listen to his stuff all the time. I wouldn't shout him out if I didn't like him, but I just think he might have missed one. I think he might have missed the scene where there was three children. There was three children on the floor, and I think that's why you got to watch our stuff, people. I think that's why you got to check into Mangum Talks, because we catch these things.
In fairness, I think there were two children on the floor, and they talked about another one not being there, and that the coincidence was right there. Now we got to rewatch it because now you and I are conflicting on what we saw.
No, we're not conflicting. There were three children. We talked about it. There were three children there. I called it out because I said, you've got the three children there. We stopped for a moment. There they are, right there. You got the three children. So you could have done the scene where you pick, but they didn't do it. That's neither here nor there. That's not this episode. This episode, as you can tell, I'm a little lukewarm on.
I liked it, and I think it's going to be fun to talk about it because it's, again, an episode of where a lot of it was characters discussing the state of where they are and what they want to do. And that makes for some fascinating unpacking when we go into a longer recap.
I agree.
It's hard to recap a battle. A battle is guys swinging swords. A conversation between two people where you're seeing a lot of character growth or a lot of character analysis happen in real time, there's a discussion waiting to happen.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to talk about this episode?
No, it's exciting when we come back in a few days and discuss it in exacting multi-hour detail.
That's exactly what we'll do. So if you had not subscribed to the pod, if you're watching this on YouTube, you're not subscribed to our pod, please subscribe to the pod because that's where we will release the full breakdown of the episode. Excited to do that with you, Spencer. Thanks for joining me here immediately after watching episode 3 of House of the Dragon. We'll be with you on Wednesday to do the full breakdown. And then, of course, 1 week from today to review episode 4. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.